Ladies and gentlemen, as you might have heard, Donald Trump is having a little bit of a tiff with the Pope.
Why Robert Barron supports you and your policies. He praises you for defending religious freedom.
Yeah.
He now says you owe Pope Leo an apology. Will you apologize?
No, I don't, because Pope Leo said things that are wrong.
I'm Rich Lowry of National Review, and I think most of us, even those of us who, like me, aren't Catholics, have a tendency, if there's a dispute between the pontiff on the one hand and a secular leader on the other, on any question with profound moral implications, you're going to reflexively think the Pope probably is getting the better of the argument. And there is no doubt that Trump has said outrageous things in the course of the Iran war, which precipitated this dispute with the Pope. And Trump shouldn't be attacking the Pope in the terms that he is, calling him weak on crime and all the rest of it. That is absurd. Yet, I think it is the Pope who is giving a misleading view, a misleading impression about what the Bible really says about warfare, which is a really important question. That's what I want to address today. Let's first go to something that the Pope said during his Palm Sunday homily. This is an account in a journalistic outlet of his homily. Pope Leo went on to recall the prophet Isaiah's words, "Even though you make many prayers, I will not listen. Your hands are full of blood." Jesus is the King of peace who rejects war, whom no one can use to justify war, said the Pope. He does not listen to the prayers of those who wage war, but rejects them. Now, Pope Leo is quoting there from the book of Isaiah, obviously a book of the Old Testament having to do with sin and judgment and repentance and hope. Now, he's making a very strong claim here that God does not listen to the prayers of those who wage war. If you take what Leo is saying literally, it's actually a preposterous claim. Are we saying that God didn't listen, to take easy examples among leaders of Western countries, didn't listen to Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War, didn't listen to Winston Churchill during World War II? There's some grunt in a trench somewhere who's completely righteous, but he's waging war. He's trying to kill an imperial Japanese soldier or whatever it is, and God's not going to listen to his prayer. That just seems crazy. And even in the context of Isaiah, this claim makes no sense whatsoever. Pope Leo is quoting chapter 1, verse 15, this very evocative language, we just heard it, about having blood on your hands. So God isn't going to listen to your prayers. So this kind of sounds like it's referring to a military conflict, but it is not at all. This is a judgment of the people of Judah for their sins. They are outwardly religiously faithful, but inwardly they are not. They are hypocrites. They oppress the vulnerable in their own society. This is about their self-abasement, not a military conflict. So that's a real misleading use of that verse, and also is very strange given what else transpires in the book of Isaiah. The Assyrians are going to be an instrument of God's judgment. This big army is heading towards Jerusalem. And what does the king of Judah do? He prays to God to deliver them from this military menace. And you know what? The Assyrians are struck down. According to the Bible, 185,000 Assyrian soldiers are struck dead. So you could just as easily flip around what the Pope is saying and actually say the book of Isaiah shows that God does listen to the prayers of those who wage war. The fact of the matter is that the Bible treats warfare as a tragic but inevitable aspect of human existence. Ecclesiastes, there's a time for peace and there's a time for war. If you read the books of Joshua, Judges, Samuel, Kings, it's often a time of war. So for the Bible, the question is not necessarily one between peace and war. The key question is whether the war is righteous or not, whether it's being waged by a righteous people or not. So this is the distinction we see throughout the Old Testament between battles won by Israel or Judah or battles lost. It's a difference between a faithful people winning the battle of Jericho, winning the battle of Deborah, or a faithless people who have turned to idolatry, getting smashed in a horrifying, historic defeat where the Babylonians take Judah and destroy Jerusalem. Now, there's a tendency on the part of some Christians to say, well, that's the Old Testament. That has nothing to do with us. In its most extreme form, this is the Marcion heresy this has come up in a video before that totally rejects the Old Testament, but that heresy was discredited long ago. As Christians, the Old Testament belongs to us, obviously, as well. Now, it's true in the New Testament, we hear from Jesus a message overwhelmingly of love and mercy, but that is not a warrant for pacifism. How do you reconcile an ethic of love and mercy with the existence of evil in the world and the inevitability and necessity of warfare? Well, this is how we get just war theory. Some of the greatest Christian thinkers of all time, Augustine and Aquinas, come up with this basic idea. It's Augustine who works out the elemental arguments, and it's Aquinas who makes them more systematic. The basic idea is that a war has to have a just cause. It can't be for the sake of conquest or exploitation, and a war must be waged justly. You have to go out of your way to minimize civilian casualties. It has to be waged in a proportional manner. So this is the key moral test that the Catholic Church, by the way, itself accepts. Now, Pope Leo apparently believes the Iran war does not meet this test, but his view is not dispositive. It's not binding on Catholics. It's his opinion about a contemporary matter. Obviously, that's his right to have that view, but I think where he's wrong is he's creating this impression through his statements that there's no such thing ever as a just war, and that is just wrong. And by the way, he might consider, with regard to the Iran war, Trump first started threatening to attack the Iranians when they were in the midst of slaughtering tens of thousands of protesters in their own streets. And if Trump were actually to succeed in toppling this regime and something were to replace it that were more respectful of the rights of Iranians, that would be a boon to the Iranian people and make the region safer and more peaceful. It's understandable, though, that Trump's wild threats are completely anathema to Pope Leo when Trump talks about, say, ending Iranian civilization. Even if he's BSing, even if he doesn't mean it, that is likely going to cause the Pope to speak out. That is completely fair game, but it doesn't change the fact that the Bible acknowledges warfare as an unfortunate fact of human existence. Yes, as the book of Isaiah famously says, they shall beat their swords into plowshares, but not yet. I'm Rich Lowry, over and out.